Okay, welcome everyone to our electronic committee of the whole meeting on February the 8th, 2022. Due to the COVID pandemic, the committee is practicing physical distance. I and Chair Redmond are present in the council chambers and the other members are participating electronically. I will now call on Mr. Short to conduct the roll call.
Thank you, Councillor Galloway. Chair Redmond?
Present.
Councillor Armstrong?
Present.
Councillor Clark?
Present.
Councillor Erb?
Present.
Councillor Foxton?
Present.
Councillor Galloway?
Present.
Councillor Harris?
Present.
Councillor Jaworski?
Present.
Councillor Jowett?
Present.
Councillor Kiefer?
Present.
Councillor McGarry?
Present.
Councillor Nowak?
Present.
Councillor Shantz?
Present.
Councillor Strickland?
Here.
Councillor Verbanovic? We have regrets from Councillor Rents. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Short. Can I have a motion to reconvene into open session? Councillor Kiefer and Councillor Harris, could you please use your voting buttons? And that is carried. We are reconvened. I would like to acknowledge that the land on which we gather virtually today is the traditional territory of the Haudenosaunee, Anishinaabe, and Neutral people. We acknowledge the enduring presence of the Indigenous people with whom we share this land today, their achievements and their contributions to our community. Any declaration of pecuniary interest to declare? Okay, seeing none. We are a little bit ahead of schedule, which is not a bad thing. So we are going to have Dr. Wang do the COVID update. Thanks, Dr. Wang, for coming early. Then, subject to that, we will decide if some of the delegations are already in the waiting room, we will switch to them. Otherwise, we might attempt to start on the consent agenda. Dr. Wang.
Good morning, Chair Galloway and Council. Thank you for the opportunity to provide an update. I have 3 slides, and then after my update, David Aoki will present a vaccine rollout update. David is our Director of Infectious Diseases and Chief Nursing Officer, and he is filling in for Vicky Murray this week, who is taking a well-deserved break. So if we start with the first slide, which is the highlights. COVID-19 trends in Waterloo region and across the province are slowly decreasing. We do not expect a rapid fall, however, and may even experience some increases in the shorter term. 2, Omicron is still circulating at high levels. I would strongly advise residents to gradually and cautiously resume their activities while following public health precautions. 3, the Omicron subvariant BA.2 has been detected in our wastewater. This underlies the importance of continuing to increase our community immunity through vaccination. And 4th, a 3rd dose of the COVID-19 vaccine greatly reduces the risk of serious outcomes and the strain on our healthcare system. Next slide, please. We are relying on indicators such as wastewater monitoring, percent positivity of tests, and trends in outbreaks in high-risk settings as proxy indicators to monitor local trends. Overall, trends in Waterloo region are slowly decreasing from very high levels. Hospitals are still caring for a very high number of people with COVID-19. The strain on our healthcare system is likely to remain high for a few more weeks. That said, we are starting to see the number of patients hospitalized and the number of staff impacted by COVID-19 slowly decrease. Monitoring in schools and daycares is not showing any concerning trends at this time. The average daily rate of absenteeism for all schools in Waterloo region for the last 2 weeks of January was under 13%. Last week, 5% of schools reported a daily absenteeism rate between 20 and 30%. Sadly, due to the extent at which Omicron has spread, we have seen an increase in COVID-19 related reported deaths in January and expect this trend to continue into February. Death is the most delayed of all indicators and reflects previous spread. The number of infections, hospitalizations, and deaths would be much if we did not have high vaccination rates and if our community had not made efforts to reduce contacts during this Omicron wave. Last slide, please. A cautious approach to reopening by continuing to use the tools that work to blunt the COVID-19 wave will serve us well. If indicators continue to trend in the right direction, the next restrictions will ease no earlier than February 21st. Highlights of the next steps of the provincial reopening plan are listed on this slide. Vaccination is key. A third dose reduces the risk of serious illness and is strongly advised for everyone who is eligible to receive it. Unvaccinated people have a 6 times higher risk of being in the hospital and a 12 times higher risk of being in the ICU compared to people who have received at least 2 doses of the COVID-19 vaccine. In the coming weeks, residents should continue to gradually and cautiously resume their daily activities while following public health precautions. We have come very, very far. We should not let our guards down now. And finally, thank you to all our residents who are helping to protect themselves and others through vaccination and public health precautions. You are preventing much more serious illness, hospitalizations, and deaths, helping our healthcare system to begin to recover, enabling our schools to remain open, and helping our businesses reopen and stay open. Your actions are what is enabling Waterloo Region to move forward. Thank you. And I'll now pass it over to David Aoki.
Thank you, Dr. Wang. So for our vaccine update, I'll start with our most recent numbers from our vaccine dashboard, which indicate that we are now at 88.46% of those 5 years of age and older with at least 1 dose, and 84.06% of those same residents who are fully vaccinated. I want to highlight that our 5 to 11 age cohort is now 4.49% with a first dose and 28.52% fully vaccinated. We have also immunized almost 280,000 persons with a third dose. We are starting to see less volume at our mass immunization clinics and have moved to a walk-in modality for residents to try to remove as many barriers as possible and remove the necessity of needing to book an appointment at most of our sites. Some clinics, such as our Wellesley Clinic and our Kids Ability clinics, are still by appointment, or other clinics where indicated either by volume or by working with those who are helping to arrange the clinics to ensure the clinic meets the needs of the community. As part of the strategy to continue to provide vaccines where people live, work, and play, we are expanding our offerings for more mobile clinics. This week alone, we are offering more than 25 mobile clinics at schools, long-term care homes, community centers, partnered organizations, congregate settings, and shelters. Starting this week through February, our partner, Hourglass HR, is also offering walk-in mobile clinics with our rural municipalities. This week, they are at Woolwich Memorial Center in Elmira, and later in the week, they are at North Dumfries Community Complex, with clinics to follow in the other municipalities later in the month. I would like to highlight that our local vaccine rollout is not entirely a regional and public health-led effort. Pharmacy and primary care continue to be excellent sources of COVID-19 immunizations. We continue to onboard new local pharmacies who wish to participate. And for those who are unable to find a mass immunization clinic or mobile clinic that meets their availability, We are encouraging residents to reach out to either their primary care provider or their local pharmacy as they continue to provide COVID-19 vaccines locally. I'd also like to highlight that since Omicron, we did a push with employee-led clinics in January to help support first, second, and third doses for their employees and their families. We want to thank all 46 employers who reached out asking how they can help protect their staff. Through this campaign, employers were able to hold 24 clinics and provide 5,370 immunizations to their employees. As part of our goal to increase vaccination rates in those 5 to 11 years of age, the region is working closely with our local school boards as well as private schools to assess schools and communities to host clinics. Shortly, the Waterloo Region District School Board and Waterloo Catholic School Board will send letters to parents outlining where to be immunized and with links to resources in multiple languages that will support parents in making decisions to choose vaccination. We will also be sending letters directly to parents of students for which schools we have already planned clinics to notify them of the date, time, and location of the upcoming clinic in their child's school. We continue to work with both the French language school boards and private schools to offer similar clinics and communications. Finally, I would like to highlight 2 recent updated guidance we've received from both our federal and provincial partners. On Friday, February 4th, the National Advisory Committee on Immunization released recommendations for booster doses provided after an infection. So the recommendation is that for an improved response, a longer interval between infection and vaccine is preferred. Yesterday, the Ministry of Health released guidance concurring with this recommendation and stated that 3 months after infection is associated with improved antibody response to receive a booster shot. We want to reiterate that if you have already had COVID and received your booster dose when you became eligible, but in less than 3 months since your infection, you made a good decision. There are no safety concerns with receiving a booster dose less than the 3 months, and the 3 months is strictly for improved antibody response. I would also like to highlight that yesterday we received guidance from the province on booster doses for 12 to 17-year-olds. A third dose is now recommended after completion of the second dose in those who have had underlying medical conditions. So there's quite a list. I won't go through them all. And also for those who are First Nation, Inuit, and Métis individuals. As always, we continue to encourage those who are eligible to be vaccinated or to complete their vaccination series when appropriate. If people are unsure if the vaccine is appropriate for themselves or their children, we recommend that they speak with their primary care provider and consult and have their questions answered. And thank you very much, Dr. Wang and Madam Chair.
Okay, thank you, Dr. Wang and David. Councillor Shantz.
Thank you. I just wanted to thank staff for the vaccine clinics in the townships, particularly I stopped in at the one in Elmira yesterday as they were getting started up, and there was a lineup of 7-ish people, I think, that were waiting for the vaccine. So that was encouraging, and I hope you had a good turnout. So thank you very much for doing that.
Okay, Councillor Foxton.
Thank you very much, and through you, Chair. Yes, I'm very excited about the clinics. I'm working Friday and Saturday. I'm asking people to have a heart because it's Valentine's Day and show the love. My concern is, Dr. Wang, is everything you say is absolutely right. We have to maintain, but things are getting ugly. They're getting ugly everywhere. I was shocked at finding out that residents from the township went up to Ottawa. And that when the trucks went through the 401, a whole group of the people at the 401, and I don't know if there are residents or not, made a statement by masses of them walked through our grocery store unmasked. They never bought anything or anything, but the push now is on in defiance. The grocery store called me the other day, and some people come in daily without a mask on just to prove they can. So I think, and I don't think there's anything you can do but keep saying the same statements. Let's get everybody vaccinated. But I think we're going to see a minor rebellion. And I think that no matter what we suggest, when that March date hits, people are going to assume this is done and over, and they're going to act accordingly. And all we can do is send out the message. And those that are going to follow will follow. And I would still say that's about 60 to 80%. And the reason I don't give it higher is because some of the people in the 80% range or 78% range, that 10, 15% are frustrated and they want to be done. So just a heads up, like I was speaking earlier, I've talked to my staff. I've asked them to talk to all our workers. I said, be non-confrontational, say you're just doing your job. And we have a little panic thing that each of the staff can carry that will send it right to their supervisors so that they are to use that if anything escalates. My other concern is at events such as our hockey games, where the maskers meet with the non-maskers. And I'm concerned about confrontation there. So I think there's a whole host of issues where that transition period is going to be interesting.
Okay. Councilor McGarry.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and through you. Thank you again, Hsiu-Li and David, for your updates and for continuing to try and keep those of us in the community as safe as possible. And I know that we don't have Lee Flaircloth here, but I know Dr. Wang is certainly in contact. And I think that all of us on this call are still very concerned about the hospital loads and the fact that there's, until recently, I don't know about this week's numbers, there are more patients than there are beds in Waterloo region. Hallway medicine, ambulance offload delays, leaving us short, are still present. There are still many, many individuals in Waterloo region as well as Ontario who have had their surgeries and procedures and diagnostics cancelled. And some are suffering those consequences as their cancer grows and other healthcare indicators have shown. How do we try and communicate that message to those that are done with COVID, even though COVID hasn't been done with our healthcare system, and try and get people to understand that this isn't necessarily about protecting each other for those that are not, complying with mask mandates or vaccine mandates, but it's our healthcare system, our healthcare workers, and the entire system that's at risk, including ongoing issues with health-related issues because of the delay in their procedures.
Yes, through you, the chair. I concur that those are the very serious impacts of COVID-19 waves, and we've seen the most serious wave actually just occur. And I think it's through highlighting those facts, as you just did, Councillor McGarry. The large majority of our population has complied with the requirements and the requests, and they have prevented so many more consequences for our healthcare system. It's true that our healthcare system is still very strained, and even though it's not necessarily a direct impact for many of us, it is something that is why we have to gradually and cautiously loosen restrictions. And it's really the fastest way to allow the hospital system to recover and allow it to begin to ramp up the surgeries that were delayed again. So by, proceeding cautiously, we are actually helping all our fellow citizens in our community, be able to access the services in healthcare that many of them need. So I know it's it is a challenging message to pass, because for many, many people, COVID-19, many of us have gotten COVID-19, but in addition, from many of us, it's a relatively mild illness, right? You feel sick, but many of us don't need to go to hospital and such. But I think it's just really important to keep highlighting what you've highlighted, Councillor McGarry, because that really brings home the reality that this has been a very serious wave just because of how transmissible it's been and of the sheer number of people that have needed hospital care and what the hospitals have had to do to cope during this wave in terms of delaying procedures. These things are more hidden, more unseen, but they have just as many consequences for the people that are going through it. And that's why we have to continue to pull together and, continue to be cautious and gradual with the resumption of our activities to give those residents of ours in our community the best chance to get their surgeries rescheduled as soon as possible. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Kiefer.
Thank you, Chair Galloway, and thank you, Dr. Wang and David, for your updates. My concerns are in the area of our schools with the students and the teachers, and I've heard from several teachers. And I'm just wondering, could you give us an update on the, if possible, could you give us an update on the testing kits that are supposed to be out there available? Do we know if the schools are adequately supplied? You may not have the answer to this, but I just thought I'd get your version of what's happening there.
Thank you for the question, Councillor Kiefer. So my understanding is that the school boards are being supplied with rapid antigen test kits to replenish the supply that had started to be given out to students and staff, but people may be using now and may need to have a replenishment of their supplies. So the school board administrators will probably have the most up-to-date information, but what we've heard is that those supplies have come in or are coming in, and we have not heard of any significant issues with respect to that. But it's something that the supply will continue to improve going forward. There had been really a run on the global supply of these tests, and we didn't have much of them in January, but my understanding is the situation has improved and should continue to improve.
Thank you for that. And Chair Galloway, I have another question, if I could.
Go ahead.
Dr. Wang, I was concerned on the slide you showed on the trending of what's going on, the Omicron and that. And I noticed that Cambridge was not declining, it was going up. And so I'm a little concerned about that. I don't know if you could comment on that.
Yeah, for sure, Councillor Kiefer. So what the researchers have indicated is that we have to be cautious when we see little blips like that, because that could be just an indication that isn't really a data point that isn't really in line with the other data points, but we won't know until a little bit of time has passed. So we'll have another update on our wastewater this Friday. It happens every week towards the end of the week. And they noticed that as well. And they said not to really draw any conclusions at this time, just based on, that small data point, so to speak. We have to look at it on a bit longer term perspective. We do know that in Waterloo, it is continuing to go down a little, but at all sites, what we have noticed is that it has really slowed down in terms of the descent. So I wouldn't be surprised if the levels sort of plateau at very high levels still, which just really means that there's still a lot of circulation of Omicron in our community. And, we just have to continue to do what we've been doing to date. But yeah, for Cambridge, I wouldn't put too much into just one data point, and we'll have to see. but I don't have any indications that the situation is really any different in Cambridge or significantly different. And I think this may be part of the overall trend of the wastewater signals descending, but very slowly, and in the shorter term, maybe plateauing a bit at these higher levels. Hope that helps.
Thanks for the clarification, Dr. Wang. Thank you very much.
Chair Redmond.
Thank you, Chair Galloway. I just wanted to start off with probably observing, I don't think this community has ever been more united in our weariness of having to deal with this pandemic. And we're at a juncture as we navigate what we hope is sort of the final weeks of this extraordinary limit and public health precautions that we're asking people to adhere to, that the vast majority of people in Waterloo region have adhered to it. Some people have made other choices not to get a vaccine. And I think what we owe each other as a community is simple respect and civility. And I would call on all of us who are in leadership positions and everybody in the community to offer that respect and that civility and discourse and interaction with our fellow human beings in Waterloo region. Now is the time that we've needed it as much as ever. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Chair Redmond, for that. Councillor Foxton.
Hsiu-Li, through you, Chair. You put on one of your slides the BN4 or BA4 or Beta4, whatever was up there.
BA.2, yeah.
What was it?
It's the Omicron subvariant, BA.2.
Point two, thank you. So how is that progressing? Do you think it's just a minor blip, or what are your feelings on that?
Oh, thank you for the question, Councillor Foxton. So I believe BA.2 is, well, we know through wastewater it's here. And what's difficult to predict is what will happen next. Will it grow? Will it potentially start to dominate over BA1? Or will it be present but eventually subside? It's very difficult to know for sure. Scientists are watching that carefully. But what we know about BA.2 is that it appears to be more transmissible than the original Omicron subvariant, the first one that we've encountered, which is called BA.1, by the way. So it appears to be more transmissible, but there's no evidence that it's A, more severe, or B, that it is less susceptible to vaccine. And what the expert recommendation is in terms of how to manage with BA.2 is simply to continue the measures that we know have been working against the original Omicron variant, and that we think will continue to bring this under control. So that's really the takeaway message. Yes, we have BA.2. It really means, again, it's another indicator, again, that we have to be cautious and gradually relax measures, as well as our personal measures and activities that we do, gradually increase that over time, and continue with our vaccination campaign. And those are the things, that will get us to the other side as soon as possible. So we need to go slow to actually go faster.
Good analogy. Thank you very much.
Okay, I see no more questions. So thanks once again, Dr. Wang and David, for the update. And we will now go to delegations. And we do have 3 items that involve delegations today. There were delegations received after the release of the addendum agenda yesterday as well. So they were not on your printed or on the digital agenda, and we'll get to them shortly. I'd now like to remind all delegations of some guidelines for participation in today's meeting. Please leave your video and camera turned off, and your microphone and audio muted until you are called upon to speak. And then if you conduct yourself in any of the following manners, it will result in an immediate removal from the meeting. We don't expect this to happen, but we'll say it just the same. Interrupting counselors, staff, or other delegations, derogatory statements, turning your camera on at inappropriate times, and any hate speech or defamatory comments. So the first delegation, a matter not on the today's agenda, I'll call on Rukhsana Tanwir. If Rukhsana is
Good morning.
there.
Do I need to turn on my video?
You can turn on your camera. Yes, Rukhsana, you can turn on your camera.
Okay, good morning.
Okay, good morning.
First, I want to inform Chair and members of Council that OPA 13 amendment decision is made under appeal in Ontario Land Tribunal. Today, I just want to address a part of the problem related to OPA 13 amendment indirectly. First, I want to make sure if I can discuss part of that problem related to Chicopee Hill School, I need permission from Chair to discuss and highlight that problem. May I go?
Yes, go ahead.
So there is ongoing traffic problem created by locating school at intersection of Lackner Regional Road 53, two major arterial roads. There are two major problems. Children and toddlers, along with parents, sometimes mothers who have strollers, newborn baby in it, plus a toddler, plus another child who is enrolled in the school, is walking along the Regional Road 53 to reach Chicopee Hills School. Imagine they are all walking towards school coming from east side of Regional Road 53, subdivision 30T 10202. They are all walking on Regional Road 53 with heavy traffic, including heavy trucks. Not only this, before they reach to the take right turn to enter the school land, the pedestrian walkway becomes shorter in depth. This situation is a constant threat for the children and toddlers. It's a matter of time that one of child playfully pushes another child and ends up in front of a heavy truck or any other vehicle and becomes heading in the newspaper. There is no barrier or safety for those children who walk along Regional Road 53. I want to identify and highlight this problem in today's meeting. I have question for committee and council why that school was transferred from inside subdivision. There was a lot designated for school beside phase 5 of subdivision that was safe and more appropriate place to build a school. But for unknown reasons, school board decided to move and transfer school site from safe location to intersection of Regional Road 53 and Lackner, two major arterial roads with heavy traffic coming from 401, Highway 7, 8, Cambridge, region of Waterloo Airport, and all industrial area across the bridge towards the east. That bridge is a gateway to Kitchener and intake heavy traffic and disperse inside the city of Kitchener. Okay. So residents were promised by school and councillors that there will be a inside trail walking path from Clear Hills, I think, for students residing east side of Regional Road 53 catchment area, but that hollow promise was never fulfilled. And Region City have left those children on mercy of God. So I have some videos, map, and everything I sent by email. If you can bring it on the screen, please.
Do staff have that? Okay, yes, here comes.
Yeah, this is the article in the newspaper, and it shows that what is the problem over there, and how 650 junior kindergarten school children go to school on Regional Road 53C. Please, next slide with the map. I would suggest all the councillors to read this article from the news. I don't want to take much time. So next, the map, please. So this is the map. It shows over here. I can go. You can see my mouse? You guys can see my mouse? No? Okay, in the beginning of this map,
Apparently,
you can see that there is a Eden Oak Trail and the bridge, the bridge I was talking about, and then it comes a Eden Oak Trail where they are, by OPA 13 amendment, the density is transferred from inside the phase 5 area to on the regional road 53, but that is not appropriate because of geographical location of this place. And it will, you can see this traffic coming out from these green vehicles coming out from the regional road 53. This is right out here for the community road Eden Oak Trail. So it's good. Traffic will go inside the community, so it will lesser the traffic volume on the regional road. But at the same time, this is I'm talking about. So at the same time, these vehicles are coming out from here. That means they are going to engage whole 1 lane out of 2 lane to go in and out of Eden Oak Trail, and this transfer of density, which already have on the left side. There is a 70 below run drive. They have 3 and 4 story apartment townhouses. And here they are the other side opposite that they are going to construct 312, I think, condos over here with condos
Rukhsana,
and
I just have to mention that your time is up, but you could please wrap up.
Okay. So I go to the here. This is the main thing. The Chicopee Hill schools. So traffic is coming over there, and then what happens? There is before Lackner, there is this in and out for Chicopee Hill School. Traffic goes inside the school and comes out of the school, and this is a very critical situation because there is a right turn lane over here which goes to the right, and then these vehicles are coming out from the east side, and they are crossing that. This is a crisscross situation. Can you show the video, please? Thank you. Next video.
I'm sorry, Rukhsana, we're out of time.
So I have. This is a very dire problem, and you guys give more time so I can elaborate what's going on there. There's a very dangerous situation for the children.
Yes,
matter for the children.
We're going to We're going to email the video to all members of council.
Okay, thank you.
They can watch it.
So that was. I will go with my okay.
Okay.
Residents were promised by school and council that there will be an inside trail walking path from Clare Hills for students residing east of the regional road 53 catchment area, but I did that already. So that was problem for pedestrians are facing. Now come to the residents who use vehicles enter and exit to school just few meters before busy Lackner regional road 53 intersection, which is again left on mercy of God. There is no arrangement to control that traffic going in and coming out of school. You must watch video after that, please. Vehicles which comes out of the school after pickup or drop of children, they need to go towards west direction. At that portion of regional road 53, there is only 1 lane to go towards west, and a second lane turns into right turning lane towards Lackner. When vehicles try to go to lane to the west, they have to intersect right turning lane. Vehicles coming from east side of the from east have to intersect traffic coming out of
Rukhsana,
school in order to turn right to
please wrap up at Rukhsana. You're almost at 10 minutes now, twice the allowed time. So now you're muted. And I'm wondering if, while we're waiting here, if staff have any comment on this. The delegation's referring to an official plan amendment and zoning bylaw amendment. and I'm not quite sure how that relates to what Rukhsana is talking about. Mr. Schmidt? I know we're aware of the safety issues, but I just was more concerned about the planning matters that appear to be referenced here. I'm not sure about that.
Through you, Mr. Chair, I was going to comment, yes, we are aware of the safety issue, and we have been working with the school board and city staff on the in-school or off of Fairway Road connection.
Right.
That was originally planned, so I know work is being ongoing on that. As far as the planning matters, I think Ms. Cutler.
Yeah, Amanda's here. Amanda, can you address the planning issues?
I can. And first, I'll start off through you, Chair Galloway. This matter is before OLT, so the delegate has made an appeal to the Ontario Land Tribunal with respect to the region's decision to approve Official Plan Amendment 13. But the region did approve an Official Plan Amendment in September, which proposed to increase density of a block within a subdivision plan. So essentially, there were some modifications as part of that plan to transfer density to the block that Ms. Tanwir is speaking about to provide for increase in density along that site. The region did not have any concerns with respect to that change in density throughout the plan of subdivision with respect to overall transportation, and issued a decision approving the amendment in September.
Okay, thank you very much. Any other questions that members of council have for the delegation or for staff? Okay, so this matter is not on the agenda, but Rukhsana, staff will continue to work with you on that matter, and of course, and the City of Kitchener as well, because the sidewalks and pedestrian activities are related also to the City of Kitchener, staff appear to be quite aware, and I personally am aware, as I think most members from Kitchener are aware of some of the concerns related to that particular school. Okay, so we'll move on to the next delegation, or the next item. We'll ask and we'll go to the delegation first. Jeff Willmer. Jeff, you're in the room. There he is.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman and committee. Good morning. My name is Jeff Willmer, and I'm a volunteer and a board member with A Better Tent City. So A Better Tent City is a community of 50 people who formerly unsheltered and are now living in community in private cabins and sharing common facilities. We relocated in late October to our current site on Ardell Tap, and we're extremely grateful to the City of Kitchener and the Public School Board for making that property available. As explained in the report before you, today I'm requesting financial support from the region in the amount of $155,000. A Better Tent City operates on a very modest budget. We rely primarily on the shelter allowance that each resident pays, and we rely heavily on community donations. We keep our operating costs quite low. The residents themselves contribute to managing the community, and we have a lot of volunteers, and we pay zero for administration and overhead. So moving is what has caused us to incur some pretty significant costs, and in particular regarding the rental of a generator for 5 weeks and the setting up of electric power. Now the generator was necessary in order for the residents to have heat and light in the early weeks at the new location. And this was not a typical generator. As you can appreciate, it was to power 42 tiny homes. So it was about the size of a food truck. As I say, we rented that for about 5 weeks from late October right into early December. And the purpose of that obviously was that the residents had heat and power, light to their cabins. So incurring those costs effectively drained our resources, and that set us back for the next major initiative, which is now just getting underway, converting portable classrooms to a proper kitchen and dining area. So we're starting work on that, but we still have invoices to pay for the work that was done late last year. So wrapping up, A Better Tent City has been up and running for almost 2 years now, and we believe it's proving itself to be an innovative form of supportive housing, which is cost effective and is helpful to the people who were unsheltered and people who were considered some of the hardest to house in our region. So I hope we can count on your support of this financial request, and happy to answer any questions that you might have.
Okay, thanks, Jeff. Thanks to you and your group for the great work that you're doing. Any questions of Mr. Willmer? Councillor Vrbanovic.
Thank you very much, Chair Galloway, and Jeff. Welcome, and great to see you again. Just great presentation, and I'm just wondering if you can touch a little bit on the people element of all this. You know, I know that there's been some really great stories in terms of outcomes for individuals and so on. And as we know, many of these residents, probably experience some of the greatest level of challenges faced by some in our community. And yet you've been able to, through this initiative, see some positive outcomes. And I'm wondering if you can just talk about that a little bit.
Sure, thanks very much. Through the chair. So we often hear it said that nobody chooses to be homeless, and the reasons are many, but primarily the people who live at A Better Tent City live with mental illness and drug addiction, and for those reasons they have either been restricted from using the shelter system, or they fear going into the shelters, or their conduct is disruptive to the extent that they've been evicted from housing. And so A Better Tent Cities turned out to be sort of the accommodation of last resort for people who were on the streets or in a park or in the woods. There have been some really positive outcomes, as you suggest, and a big part of it is that people have the dignity of a place of their own, a safe place to sleep and store their belongings, and they have support of community. Not only that meals are delivered to the site, but that the residents themselves have become a supportive family for each other, together with the volunteers and the wraparound services that come to the site. Sanguine with healthcare, Aqua with harm reduction, the food bank. The list goes on and on about the services that are effective at being delivered on site. So some of those positive outcomes have helped residents get control back of their lives and reunite with family. There are a small number of success stories in terms of people re-entering the workforce with part-time labor. And there are a couple of the residents who are about to move into the WISE new development for single women on Strasbourg Road. So there are some small successes, but I think that there are successes that touch every single life of the 50 residents at Better Tent City.
That's tremendous to hear. One of the other things that I've become aware of due to reach outs to me has been interest in this model by other municipalities, and I'm aware of I think at least 3 other cities that are looking at it. 3 other areas, and much like we've seen this develop here in the region. Wondering if you can just talk a little bit about that in terms of what you're seeing in that regard.
Yes, from the earliest days when this was still just a concept.
We have a request for the request. The agenda item is for a grant, and I'm hoping that we can contain the discussion to the grant. That's what the agenda is about today. And if we can continue on in that regard, Councillor Vanovic.
Yeah, sure, Chair Galloway. Just I think it's relevant because the grant, we want to make sure that we're investing wisely, and this just speaks to the credibility of the project.
Well, okay. I don't think there's any problem with the grant. I think the grant's going to go through swimmingly. So go ahead, Mr. Willmer.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So two communities have already copied the idea essentially and started accommodation of tiny cabins for unsheltered people. And the first was Duncan, BC, and the second was Kingston, Ontario. There are a couple more citizen groups that are making good progress towards doing something at a larger scale, and those would be in Woodstock and Hamilton. And there are various other citizen groups in other Ontario communities that are working on it, but are finding the progress is slow. So it is one of our goals has been to prove that the concept works, and then to encourage others to replicate the idea.
Great. Well, thanks a lot, Jeff, and thank you again for your leadership and that of Father Toby and all those who are involved with this great project.
Thank you. Councillor Clark.
Thanks, Chair Galloway. I have a comment and I have a question, and I'll try to keep my comment focused on the grant. But I will say that I'm really quite encouraged to hear you refer, Mr. Willmer, to a Better Tent City as supportive housing, because I think that's what it is and what it's proving to be successful at doing. My hesitation in the past with the Better Tent City has been confusion around sheltering and if and where a Better Tent City fits into an emergency shelter model. And I don't believe it does. I think it's very clearly supportive housing. It's very clearly viewed that way by the people who live there, and it's clearly viewed that way by the people who operate the facility. And I think the fact that people have been there in some cases for 2 years is further evidence that not only is it supportive housing and not emergency shelter, but it is successful at that. With regard to the grant, I know that this is an interim facility where you're at now. How long are you anticipating remaining there?
Through the chair, the original commitment from the city and the school board was to allow us to be there 1 year. But recently we have had encouraging comments from the school board that if we need to stay longer, that they would be pleased to host us for longer. So that's encouraging for all kinds of reasons, partly because moving is disruptive and expensive, but also because the current site is actually working out quite well for us. And particularly once we have the kitchen and dining facility, it'll be a very fully equipped site. And while those facilities can travel with us, it's not surprising to anyone that moving tiny homes is one thing, but moving portable classrooms is a bigger challenge.
Okay, thank you.
Councillor Erb.
I was going to make a few comments, but I'll defer that, and when you're ready, I'm prepared to move the motion.
Okay, thanks, Councillor Erb. You've sent that out to us beforehand, and it's been slightly modified as well. Chair Redmond.
Thank you, Chair Galloway. And Jeff, thanks for coming in today. I too wanted to comment on what Councillor Clark did, which is that you're referring to housing, which I think is probably a very good label to use for this project. I understand that it's an extraordinary request, Jeff, and so I guess if anybody was having second thoughts or concerns, I just wonder if you can speak to the fact that this is an extraordinary request because of the move. And your board of directors is really an impressive group. And if you could just talk a little bit about your vision, because I know self-sustainability is one of them. Our report from staff talks about the support you've gotten on an ongoing basis from the region, but I think that those are really important things to underscore as we contemplate this grant request.
Thank you for the question and the punctuation as well. We are, as I mentioned earlier, we're a bare bones operation and rely largely on volunteers and the residents themselves contributing to community. But the region's role in identifying a single point of contact being the outreach worker from Ontario Works, that has been a big help. And through Lori Brody connecting with the community and her assistance at helping direct shelter allowance payments to us, we got the predictability and stability of knowing that monthly the routine monthly operating costs, our utility payments and so on, were covered, and we didn't have to go to the community or to government for fundraising for that. So you're right. This is an extraordinary request. It has to do with the move and the setup at a new site, and in particular, the one-time costs of the generator rental, together with the servicing of it, the fueling of it, the insurance of it, and so on for that 5-week period. So this is not something we expect to need again in the future, certainly not while we're at this site. And if and when we do move, we're hopeful that the next time we'll have more time to prepare the new site before we move to it.
So thank you for that. And I just want to underscore that was not my dog that you heard.
Councillor McGarry.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and through you. I don't have a dog, but you've all heard my cat at times, I'm sure. Thanks very much, Jeff, for your delegation this morning and for continuing along the work to really attend to some of the needs of our unique individuals in our community. And I really wanted to ask around the actual individuals that are present. I know it has become quite a community. We've spoken to that before. We've heard the stories how people regard this at their home and their community, and they support each other, including some of those individuals that have had unique needs where other members of the community are serving them right at the site. And that is really beneficial. I will be certainly supporting this request. My question, though, has to do with some of the individuals that are there that obviously are not going to take advantage of our housing system as we have it, or our shelter system, and that includes some of our shelter care. So my first question would be about the individuals. Why will they not go to our regular shelter system where they could access services for supportive housing and those kinds of things?
Through the chair, Councillor McGarry, thank you for your question. There are a lot of reasons why people may not access the shelter system, even when there is capacity in the shelters. For many of the residents of a Better Tent City, the combination of mental illness and drug addiction has taken such effect on their lives that their behavior is so disruptive that when they were in the shelter system, they've been restricted. They were too disruptive to the other people accessing shelter. For other residents of a Better Tent City, they may feel vulnerable that if they went to the shelter system, they would be maybe the victim of theft or violence, and so they're not going to take that risk. And so some people choose to live rough so that they don't expose themselves to that risk. And then there are others who are couples who can't access shelter or don't want to be separated from each other by going to the men's shelter or to the women's shelter. And a small number as well who have pets, and the pet is their closest companion, and they don't want to lose that companionship. So there's a lot of different reasons, but suffice to say, even when there is capacity in the shelter system, there are still, even with a Better Tent City beyond us, there's more than 100 people choosing to live rough in our city.
Thank you. And if I may, Mr. Chair, for a second question, I appreciate that answer. And I think that that's not necessarily well understood by our community, why people won't access shelter and sort of a roof over their heads when they do have a choice, because we have seen that we maintain capacity most times of the year in our region-wide shelter system. So my other question really has to do with I guess this very unique way of providing services to people that fall through the cracks or are square pegs in a round hole. And, some might say, well, this is catering or serving people that have addictions. There are others that would say these are serving, as you say, some of the disruptive who have had, that are banned from some of our shelters in the region. And I guess what I'm looking at is a Better Tent City is sort of serving sort of addictions and mental health issues. And they're also acting as supportive housing units for those in a kind of a unique way in serving them as supportive units. Is that sort of a fair way to describe how this is being portrayed and how it's working?
Through the chair, yes, I think that's a good description. Certainly, none of us at the leadership at A Better Tent City wants to be enabling somebody who is choosing to live a life of drug use. Our perspective and my own perspective on this has changed since the beginning. I now have a greater appreciation for how a person who has suffered trauma in their life and is led into using drugs and then falls into addiction and loses control over their life and has very limited prospects of beating their addiction. But once they've found stability of a place of their own and the support of community, they have a better prospect of beating their addiction. And so the methadone treatment program that's operating on site at A Better Tent City is one good example of that. 15 of our residents have had a doctor diagnose their addiction. A pharmacist comes to the site daily, and for over a year now, they never miss a dose of methadone. So this has got their chemical dependency under control. Their lives are much calmer now. They're not doing what they would have to do to drum up money to buy drugs on the street. So there's a benefit to the individuals and to the community. And so that's just one example of how A Better Tent City has been able to deliver healthcare and addictions treatment to people who, while they were living rough, really weren't accessing those supports at all.
And just a clarification, and I'll be done, Mr. Chair. We also know that the cycle of addiction means that many individuals fail for the first few tries at rehab and trying to sort of get beyond their addiction. And of course, it is made worse if they don't have a roof over their head or a roof over their heads. Would you say then that the recidivism or the repeat issues of returning to drug addiction are lessened because of the treatment and the support that they're getting in these units in A Better Tent City?
Through the chair, it's hard for me to compare because I'm still new to this, and it's really, even though 2 years, we've learned a lot in 2 years, it's probably not a long enough period to get sort of accurate data on that. But I think the longer we go, the more we become an opportunity to measure and learn together with the other communities that might be doing something similar. So yeah, I think at this point, it's probably too early to say definitively.
Councillor Jowett.
Thanks, Chair Galloway. And so, Jeff, very interested in the point that you're making, and certainly along Councillor McGarry's questions too. We hear a lot about trauma and trauma counseling and the recidivism rate and how complex the addiction issues are, specifically around trauma. I'm hearing of other communities that are actually starting to invest in specific trauma counseling. Is this something that your organization is investigating at all?
Thank you, Councillor Jowett, for the question. At this point, not that I'm aware of. We are looking forward to the time soon when we actually have a facility on site, like the kitchen dining area, where people can gather indoors and have opportunity for counseling or conversations and those type of things. We're always looking to improve services, and I think that would be a good example of one that we're probably ready for. But I think having a facility on site will help us to take positive steps that way.
And so I understand it's a bit complex between the province and certainly us, and that would be downloading. And so I'm just kind of hoping that at some point we just do take some kinds of initiatives and look into, even if it was, something quite small. I do believe this is one of the biggest missing links in dealing with the addiction issues in our community. But thanks, Jeff. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Councillor Foxton.
Thank you, Chair. And through you, the conversation has been wonderful, but there's a really important motion that needs to come on the table. And it looks like this council needs to engage with the Better Tent City and have this discussion. So maybe we could have Jeff another time and we can have some free questions ready for him and have a fulsome discussion. But I'd really like to hear the motion. I'd really like to see this possibly happen. So I would request that we go through the motion, please.
Yeah, I'd like to get to the motion too, but I'm going to let Councillor Kiefer go first, and then Mr. Petitpierre will make any comments, and there can be some questions of Mr. Petitpierre as well before we hear Councillor Erb's motion. Councillor Kiefer?
Thank you, Chair Galloway, and I'll be very quick. Jeff, thanks for coming today, and appreciated the conversation you and I had. Just a point of clarification. If there were people in other parts of the region that would they qualify to come to the Better Tent City as well?
Through the chair, right now we don't have capacity to grow, but if anybody leaves and that frees up a cabin, then yes, and a person would be welcome to join a Better Tent City from anywhere in this region. Okay, and would you be available if, for instance, other communities or other cities were wanting to set something up, to come in as a consultant type person on that type of thing? Yes, it's a lot of what I've been doing over the past year and a half. But I don't want to set myself up as a consultant. I've kind of got my hands full just with helping at a Better Tent City.
Sorry,
I know there are others who are also capable of helping out.
Appreciate it, Jeff. Thanks very much.
Okay, thanks, Jeff. We'll turn to Mr. Petitpierre now if he has anything to say or if he just wants to answer questions.
Thanks for the opportunity. Mr. Chair, I think the report is fairly straightforward and self-explanatory. Happy to take any questions of staff as it relates to the request for the grant, though.
Okay, thanks. Ryan, any questions to Mr. Petitpierre? Okay, Councillor Erb.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And if anybody is interested in 2 grand dogs for the duration of the week, we can put that on the agenda for the end of the meeting, and I will get your address. Thanks for your indulgence. The motion is fairly straightforward. It's simply asking for council to support the information in the housing report that we provide the $155,000 as itemized, and that it come out of the funded from the 21 housing services operating budget. And I'm prepared to move that, and I'll let Councillor Clark second it, and then I can make a comment if that's okay.
Okay, Councillor Clark is seconding it, and go ahead, Councillor Erb.
Well, thanks, Jeff, for coming in and for all the work that's being done at a Better Tent City. And I think this is, for all of us, is a bit of an evolution of how we see the care that you're providing, and certainly it's been a significant evolution for a Better Tent City as well, as to where you've now incorporated as an organization and are able to move forward with those things. And I think the region has supported a Better Tent City over the last number of years in a variety of ways that's highlighted in the report, and I think this is simply an ongoing extension of that support, and building on learning and understanding how we safely provide housing and support services to some of the most vulnerable in our community. And I think one of the significant ways that the region has been able to assist and help stabilize the operation of a Better Tent City was to help facilitate a portion of the residents' ODPS benefit to ABTC to help them move towards a greater degree of financial stability. And for many of us, but for me, how we define a Better Tent City as to whether it is shelter care or perceived as permanent housing by those who live there, I think is evolving in our thinking, and I'm happy to hear Jeff referred to it as supportive housing. And for me, so the jury is still a bit out on finding the right balance of providing what is considered appropriate shelter care and permanent housing, which we are committed to in our Housing First policy. And shelter care needs to be accessible to everyone. And so how a model like a Better Tent fills that need for accessibility is an important question for me, and I think deserves more dialogue, as Councillor Fox was suggesting with a Better Tent City. For all of us, I think COVID exposed some significant weaknesses in the traditional model of shelter care, and forced providers to re-examine how that care was provided. And so as we have reassessed what we considered traditional shelter care, our concept of what in the past we considered to be traditional housing options also is evolving in our thinking, and I think deserves ongoing conversation and consideration. So in the meantime, I hope we can support the expenditure to help the work of the Better Tent City. Thank you.
Okay, Councillor Foxton.
Thank you, Chair. And of course, I'm going to support this motion, but is that a typo in it? Should it say the 2022 housing reserve or whatever? It said 2021, but I believe, didn't we already roll over 2021's
No, I believe
access into 2022?
No, I believe the intention is 2021, Councillor Foxton.
So we haven't rolled the accounts over yet then. I thought when we passed budget, we did. Okay.
I guess not.
As long as it's the right one.
Yep. Councillor Urbanovic.
Thank you very much, Chair Galloway, and thanks to Councillor Erb for bringing this forward, and Councillor Clark for seconding it. I will be supporting this, and really just want to iterate my wholehearted support for a Better Tent City. I know in speaking with Jeff and others, I refer to it as a Better Tent City 3.0 now, and just like various versions of software, it's gotten better through each progression, and will no doubt continue as it continues on this journey. I think, as Councillor Erb indicated, for us at the region, this has been an evolution in terms of our thinking around this type of housing. But I think the pandemic has really demonstrated for us, both partially because of the increased numbers of community members who need these types of support, as well as the just the lived experience of people. All of this put together has demonstrated to us that a one-size-fits-all approach doesn't work, and we need to be creative in our approaches to meet the needs of different populations. We all know that housing is a human right, and this is just another way that through our role as the housing services manager and the shelter services manager at the region, we can continue to provide relevant supports for this group of our residents. Thank you.
Okay, we can now call the questions. So if you would please vote with your voting buttons, and I support it as well. And that's carried. Thanks very much, Jeff.
Thank you all.
You and the group do.
Thank you very much.
Okay, the next item that we will bring forward is the MZO matter. We have 3 delegations on that matter. We're first going to hear from Mr. Regier and staff, and then some questions, and then we'll ask the delegations to speak. Mr. Regier.
Yes, thank you very much. Council had asked us to bring an information report with regard to the MZO application that was brought forward by Cache to Willmer Town Council. We have since been notified by Cache that the MZO application has been withdrawn. So this is good news from our perspective. Ministerial zoning orders they're a very powerful planning tool. They have they give a significant amount of discretion to the minister with regard to land use decisions in municipalities across the province. Perhaps the most important ministerial zoning order that was issued in the Waterloo region was for the Toyota plant in Cambridge, which had led to very significant investment that has really helped transform the Waterloo region over time. However, they do create an opportunity to bypass the planning process that is used to allocate land and make rational decisions with regard to the development of real estate across the region of Waterloo. The region has been well known for many decades for its regional planning process, which has resulted in good, solid decisions in the public interest, efficient use of resources, and the protection of our natural heritage and agricultural system over time. The region is currently in the middle of an MCR process, a review of its regional official plan. We are receiving a significant number of requests to bring land into the urban area. At this point, we have approximately 100 requests covering 2,000, in excess of 2,000 hectares of land to be brought into that are being requested to be brought into the urban area with very significant implications. The regional planning process is the right framework in which to review those requests and to make rational decisions about the future of the Waterloo region. So for that primary reason, our view is that the MZO process for urban subdivision development is not the appropriate tool. The review of the regional plan does allow for consideration of additional properties to be brought into the urban area, and it takes a holistic view of how that might how individual parcels fit into the natural and planned framework for urban development in the Waterloo region. So we're very pleased with the decision by Cache to withdraw the process. They have submitted an application for consideration under the review of the regional official plan, and will be dealt with through that process in a fair and transparent manner. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Rogier. Questions, Mr. Rogier? Councillor McGarry.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and through you to Rod. I understand that ministerial zoning orders have been contained in legislation for the Minister of Municipal Affairs and Housing to utilize since the mid-1950s. And until fairly recently, they were used rarely, but as you pointed out in 1984 or 5, whenever Toyota sort of got the groundbreaking going, it wasn't used very often. So my question to you is that recently, the current minister has certainly increased the number of MZOs that are across the province. And so more and more developers are actually applying for this particular tool. From my understanding, I don't think the legislation itself has been changed regarding the need for public consultation. And indeed, I think the legislation still speaks to the fact that no consultations is required, and it's really up to the minister himself. This particular minister has sort of asked for endorsement by municipal councils. So could you speak to some of the current legislation on MZOs? Thanks.
Yes. Well, I understand that Jeff Schelling is available on the call and is in a better position to speak to the legislative framework for MZOs. You're correct that historically they've been used very judiciously, and there have been some recent changes to the provisions for MZOs that are being utilized now, and they are being used much more commonly in this term of government. Over to you, Mr. Schelling.
Sure. Thanks, Mr. Regeer and Councillor McGarry. That you're absolutely correct. The tool's been in use for decades. Introduced to the Planning Act in the 1950s and 60s and used relatively sparingly over time. There's a public report of Ontario's Auditor General who did a review of planning mechanisms under the Planning Act and did focus on the Ministerial Zoning Order, which is available. I believe it's on the Auditor General's website for review and traces the history of the use of the MZO fairly extensively. There is no, you're absolutely right, there is no requirement for public consultation, although the Minister has made it clear that in considering granting a particular MZO, the Minister will expect some level of engagement at the municipal level in an instance where that's appropriate or necessary in the Minister's view. There is an exception to the public consultation if the Minister subsequently amends or revokes an MZO. There is a requirement to post that intention of the Minister's intention to do that and solicit comments from the public. But in making an initial MZO, you're absolutely right. There is no formal public consultation requirement.
Okay, thank you very much. We'll go to the three delegations then. They are technically allowed 3 minutes, but I might be a little bit lenient on that because the report was only published yesterday afternoon after the delegation deadline, and delegations were not aware that this was still necessarily coming forward given the withdrawal by Cachet. So I'll call on the first of those delegations, and that's Kevin Thomason. Welcome, Kevin.
Welcome. You can hear me okay?
We can, Kevin, yes.
Excellent, excellent. Thank you. And thank you for the leniency on the couple of extra minutes if needed. We'll try to be brief here, but needed, the community's been moving quickly on this. Honorable Chair, Mayor, Councillors, and guests. My name is Kevin Thomason, and I'm the owner of 1115 Cedar Grove Road, Willmont. There was a huge sigh of relief this past Friday when we learned that Cachet Developments had decided to withdraw their absurd Christmas Eve MZO request. Everything about this Willmont MZO was troubling. It was announced late on Christmas Eve, with a special council meeting decision being held right at dinner time on the first day back in January, with little ability to reach staff or councillors over the holidays and little opportunity for local media coverage while in the midst of a COVID-19 lockdown. The scope and scale of what was being proposed in such a rush manner was astonishing. This was thousands of homes in an entirely new village full of apartment buildings, office buildings, seniors' homes, employment lands, commercial space, a confounding transit hub, and even an agri-hub, whatever that is. Worse yet, the developer even admitted that the primary purpose of this MZO was to bypass the regional official plan review that has been underway for the past year and avoid the proper process by having the minister order approval of these developments in isolation with little regard to all the integrated population growth and infrastructure planning usually required. It would have set off likely a chain reaction of competing MZOs and created such animosity between our municipal governments that 40 plus years of shared success, our visionary official plans, our core intensification, our rapid transit, and the ability to guide growth in Waterloo region could have been at jeopardy. Almost everything that we take for granted today in our very successful region is a result of good planning and doing it better than most other places. This won't likely be the last MZO our community has to face, and we need to develop proper procedures for better dealing with them in ways to set standards that ensure adequate public notice, consultation, and engagement. MZOs have become hated by citizens and regretted by so many municipalities. In addition to removing all public consultation, environmental assessments, and ability for appeal, there are still many other troubling aspects of this MZO and development proposal. These issues include issues with the adjacent Alpine fertilizer chemical plant, the need to find better ways to reduce our carbon footprint than by locating thousands of residents far from most jobs, services, and shops in distant towns, and as this staff report cites, the need to live within the carrying capacity of our already overwhelmed Nith River watershed. Given climate change and an increasing need for local food security, we need to achieve a ROP with no local farmland loss. In conclusion, thank you for this staff report outlining so many MZO concerns. Authoritarian MZOs are not the way we should be planning our future when we need visionary solutions addressing climate change, sustainable growth, and better affordability. Now that this potentially devastating MZO has been defeated by the incredible pushback from our citizens and community groups, we look forward to collaboratively working towards the best possible regional official plan in the months ahead. Thank you.
Thanks, Kevin. Any questions of Mr. Thomason? I do have one, Kevin, and that you mentioned in your remarks about the fertilizer plant, which is somewhat adjacent to this particular property. And I'm just kind of curious. I know you've done some investigation into the hazards associated with that facility. I'm just wondering what you can tell us about that.
Yeah, thank you for the question. And indeed, the more we learn about the Alpine fertilizer plant and the situation, the more troubling it's become. And we want to be clear that Alpine has been absolutely fantastic through this. This is not about Alpine. They're being a long-term player in our community. They're making investments. They're a good employer. And they're just an operation that needs space to operate. And the more we learned about what they were doing, the 80 plus tons of ammonia they have on site and such, the more concerned we became. And kudos to Alpine, their plant managers. We've talked to their lawyers. They've been very open and very supportive of the community. And they too had a lot of concerns with what was being planned for adjacent to their facilities. We've seen in Winston-Salem, North Carolina this week, a very similar fertilizer plant. In fact, it's almost the exact same size as the Alpine facility, explode in a horrendous fire that's forced the closure of Wake Forest University and the evacuation of 6,500 residents. They're still trying to battle that fire more than a week later. The entire city still smells like chemicals that from the smoke still raining down from this fire. And it's one of those things where the plans of this development and developer to literally be locating a 6-story medical center, seniors apartments, and other things within just a few hundred meters of such a similar plant was extremely troubling. And one of our biggest concerns was that an MZO would remove the community and from all these conversations and likely bypass a lot of the environmental assessments that would normally look into these things. So there was a lot of really troubling aspects with this MZO that frankly, we just need to be doing a more careful job of planning our communities and making sure that it's successful for everyone.
Okay, thanks, Kevin. The next delegation is Greg Michalenko. Greg?
Hello, can you see me?
I can hear you.
I got you now.
Here you come. Yeah, now we can. Yeah.
Okay. I'd like to thank you for the occasion to speak to you on behalf of the Grand River Environmental Network, which has existed for 17 years and focuses on policy matters. There's been such a controversy about MZOs that I searched to find an independent voice regarding their use and came quite quickly to the document, Land Use Planning in the Greater Golden Horseshoe, that was prepared by the Auditor General and submitted late last year. I was quite shocked to see how scathing her report was. It was almost a denunciation of the way the Minister of Municipal Affairs had acted. And I just want to quote to you a few of the summary statements that she said to show you how dangerous it is to get into this new process of the MZOs. So, quoting, our audit found that numerous changes to land use planning policies, insufficient collaboration between the ministry and other entities responsible for infrastructure planning, and the province's intervention in municipalities through MZOs have undermined the goals of the growth plan, the Greater Golden Horseshoe. Broad and frequent use of minister zoning orders undermines the land use planning process. MZOs are being used to fast-track development and circumvent normal planning processes. This approach treats the land use planning process as a hurdle. Lack of transparency in issuing MZOs opens the process to criticisms of conflict and interest and unfairness. We found that there is no formal process that interested parties are required to follow to request an MZO. We also found that there are no established criteria according to which the minister assesses requests for MZOs. Therefore, we could not determine what factors the minister considered in deciding whether to issue an MZO or whether the minister assessed the merits of each MZO against the same set of factors. In our review of supporting documents, we noted that 39% of MZOs facilitated development projects by the same 7 development companies or groups of companies. Municipal representatives told us that these MZOs present significant challenges not only to their land use planning, but also their fiscal planning processes. This is because municipal services such as water and wastewater systems require significant upfront costs and must be planned prior to development's proceeding. And enhanced, in quotation marks, there's a new kind of MZO. Enhanced MZOs can now trump municipal control and are no longer required to be consistent with the provincial land use policy. And now she speaks to how things have been buried in omnibus bills. Bill 197, the COVID-19 Economic Recovery Act 2020, expanded the scope of the minister's powers to issue enhanced MZOs. Enhanced MZOs can override the use of the site plan control by which a municipality examines the design and technical aspects of a proposed development to ensure it is attractive and compatible with the surrounding area. In addition, Bill 257, the Supporting Broadband and Infrastructure Expansion Act, 2121, amended the Planning Act to provide that all MZOs, and listen carefully here, that all MZOs are not required and are deemed to never have been required to be consistent with the provincial policy statement. This amendment goes against one of the purposes of the Planning Act, which provides for a land use planning system led by provincial policy. Now, the Auditor General is a very necessary function that gives critical, independent, arm's length examination of planning processes. And our present Auditor General has received quite a few honors. We note that Brock University's Goodman School of Business distinguished 2020 Distinguished Leader Award was awarded to Auditor General Bonnie Lissick. So the Grand River Environmental Network says that, I just wanted to let you know that the highest arbiter of consistent, fair, accountable municipal planning has condemned the Minister of Municipal Affairs for having introduced a very destructive element to the planning process of the province. And we hope that you will take that into account if you're ever tempted to go the way that some of these other municipalities have. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you, Greg. Any questions of Mr. Michalenko? Okay, seeing none, we'll go to our third delegation. That's Dorothy Wilson. Dorothy, there you are.
Oh,
yes, we see you and hear you.
Thank you. Okay. Regional Chair Redmond, regional councillors and staff, members of the public, my name is Dorothy Wilson, and I'm delegating today on behalf of the Nith Valley EcoBoosters, a local organization that is committed to achieving and supporting a long-term healthy environment in Wilmot and Wellesley townships through education, action, and collaboration. I'm speaking to you today in response to the Region of Waterloo's staff report to Council on Ministerial Zoning Orders. The Nith Valley EcoBoosters group was very involved in the recent campaign to get Wilmot Council to reject Cache Development's request for an MZO that would have facilitated a mixed-use development between Baden and New Hamburg. As you can imagine, our group is very pleased that Cache Developments has withdrawn their MZO application. We felt that it was important to respond to the staff report to Council today to ensure that all factors are taken into account when considering the use of an MZO. First of all, we would like to thank the staff for preparing this report, which outlined many issues that were problematic with the Wilmot MZO and in fact relate to many MZO requests. We applaud the staff report for concluding that approval of the Wilmot MZO would have disrupted the comprehensive growth management strategy that the regional official plan review determines. However, despite the fact that the staff states that the report relates to a number of strategic focus areas, including environment and climate change, we did not find any reference to these areas in the report. We believe that climate action should have been a key consideration, as it should be when considering any development in our region. All the municipalities have committed to reducing their greenhouse gas emissions and have agreed that we are in a climate crisis. That's all the municipalities in the region of Waterloo and including the region itself. In our opinion, a key consideration in this particular case would have included the impact of Cache Development's proposal on reaching the municipality's greenhouse gas emission targets. The last sentence of the report suggests that it is preferable for development requests to, quote, align with regional council's vision, unquote. One would hope that the vision is a long-term one that includes the impacts of climate change when developing planning policies. Approving MZOs, which are a quick and many cases deficient method of initiating a development, does not allow for thoughtful consideration of the impacts. Developers and others often resort to MZOs when they feel frustrated that it takes too long to get shovels in the ground. The challenge then is somehow to create a balance between ensuring that appropriate developments are built for the times we are living in, but also in a timely manner. Thank you very much for your time today.
Okay, thank you very much, Dorothy. Any questions of Ms. Wilson? Okay, seeing none, the report was requested by council previously, and staff have brought it forward. It is here just for information. I simply want to say I want to thank staff for putting the report together, but I also want to thank the community, particularly all those individuals throughout the region and in Wilmot particularly, who voiced their interest and their concern about the MZO that Cache had put forward. I believe those efforts were significant, and in terms of the decision of the company to withdraw their application. I also know that there were other discussions going on behind the scenes that hopefully also convinced them to withdraw their application. Their application certainly was a threat to our planning process that has been successful for several decades. And hopefully we won't see any renewal of this kind of strategy in order to jump the queue, so to speak, in a planning process that has been very successful over many decades. The efforts of the community, I think, has been beneficial in other respects as well, because I believe that this has really raised the awareness of the community generally to not just MZOs, but to the very successful planning process that we have had here in the region over the last number of decades. So it has served a purpose nonetheless in that regard. Councillor Armstrong.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I too want to thank my community for responding. The process worked well. The idea of, it was unfortunate when it was submitted, but the idea was to start the process. So the January 4th meeting did that. Fortunately, a lot of people were able to put together submissions and got the process started. And as it was indicated, the final decision wouldn't have been made until the end of this month. But fortunately, Cache has saved us from having to do that. But I really appreciate the efforts of the community for coming out and helping us with the process, because that's what the idea is that they come out and commit themselves to trying to understand what the process is. And I think a lot more people understand everything that goes on with these type of projects, and also an understanding of the MZO is far more known now than it was before. So I appreciate the community coming out and responding, and I also appreciate Cache obviously listened to the community and understood that. So thank you.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Armstrong. Councillor McGarry.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and through you. Just a point of clarification, I would agree with my colleagues, Councillors Galloway and Armstrong, about the fact that the community certainly has more understanding about our planning process while this has been playing out in some of the media and some of the requests that have come before councils in our area regarding developers' requests for MZO. So I just wanted to clarify again that in the current legislation that outlines the process for MZOs, there's no municipal involvement in that legislation, although this minister has requested that councils, municipal councils, endorse the requests that are going forward to his for a request for an MZO. So just really clarifying that municipalities, according to the legislation, don't have a role. And I would just make a comment that that's where it becomes confusing to members of our community who are trying to look at what's going on with MZOs. There's no municipal process, but this minister has sort of requested endorsement by municipal councils.
That's correct. Thank you, Councillor McGarry. Okay, no further comments on that. Thanks once again to the delegations and to staff for putting the report together, and thanks to the community for getting really involved in this particular and very important matter. We'll now switch to the consent. That's all the delegations and all matters related to delegations. So we'll move on to the consent agenda, and we'll try to get the consent agenda done, and then we'll have to make some decision as to a break or no break, as the case may be. So the consent agenda, if you have anything there that you would like to talk about or extract from the group motion, please let me know at this time. Any questions or comments on any particular item? Okay, seeing nothing, I'll entertain a motion to approve the consent agenda. Councillor Brbanovic, Councillor Erb, and if you would vote. And that's carried. So we'll move to the regular agenda. We do have one item with a staff presentation, and that's the Early Years Childcare System Plan. And then we have a few other items that may take a little bit of time. I'm not sure how much. And so I'm at your discretion whether or not you want to have a break now or possibly carry on without a break. Councillor Banovic, did you have your hand up?
No, that was, I think, a misvote.
A missed vote, okay. Are you going to leave it in my hands and then complain, or or do you have a preference, Councillor Foxton? We can certainly do the first item and then
That's what I was going to suggest. Let's do the first item and take a small break.
Okay. All right.
Thank you.
We'll move on then, and we'll ask Barb Cardo to provide the presentation on the Early Years and Childcare System Plan. Welcome, Barb.
Thank you. And can you see my screen?
We can, yes.
Great. All right. Well, thank you. Thank you, Chair. I am here to present the Early Years and Childcare Service System Plan for the time period 2022 to 2026 to you today. This plan was developed based on our a year of research, analysis of data, valuable engagement with over 2,900 parents, licensed childcare programs, school board partners, early on child and family programs, community agencies, and other stakeholders. And it builds on the work of our last system plan. I'm going to share some highlights with you about the gaps in our current system and how the system plan is going to guide children's services to make significant improvements in the next 5 years. While we know that many families are benefiting from the current childcare system, I did want to spend some time sharing a few quotes from the surveys that and consultations that we did that show how the system is not working for everyone and that there are some significant gaps that need to be addressed. So the first parent shared, there needs to be more options and more centers. It is ridiculous that parents have to register with one list before their child is born. And even then, most don't find spots. With both my children, I registered with one list and never successfully found care through it. I had to do it on my own and ended up in an unlicensed home daycare because there were no other options. Another parent commented, how can a single mother return to work during a pandemic after mat leave without childcare? And if a spot came up right away, I don't have a job to pay for it, and I can't find a job because I don't have care. I'm in a tight spot. And then finally, this parent said, there are centers I have walked into with poor staff morale, staff are rude to each other, short with the children, etc. Luckily, I was fortunate enough to get into a top childcare center in the region, and the love was felt pouring out of everyone and everywhere in that environment. It was very professional, and they knew about child development. You can find it all in Waterloo region. In addition to parent feedback, we also heard many concerns from childcare and early on programs. The pandemic has amplified challenges in the early years and childcare system, particularly in the areas of workforce recruitment and retention and the sustainability of the system. And frankly, things are at a critical juncture for our childcare operators at this time. One program shared, staff burnout is real. Educators are expected to do a lot and are not compensated for it fairly. This year has been particularly difficult. Adding a pandemic on top of all the other requirements has been hard for everyone. To pay the staff more requires increased fees for parents, which also seems unfair considering what they all have had to deal with this year. And another program commented that on top of the challenges our organization experiences is the long-term sustainability of childcare as a result of the pandemic. Centers are still experiencing lower registration, a high cost of staffing related to responsibilities with cleaning and screening. These and many other factors have led to instability in the childcare system. So we've accomplished a lot over the past years. And as I said, there are, many families who have experienced the benefits of the system. But these stories from our families and our programs just show us how much further we have to go. Parents and partners also shared many positive stories through their experiences. And so what we really want to do at this time is to change the childcare system, build on the strengths that exist so that these positive experiences are enjoyed equitably across Waterloo region. The system plan is informed by what we've heard from stakeholders, and it will guide children's services in working with the community, a high quality, equitable, and responsive early years and childcare system that is accessible and affordable for every family. We know that when families have access to this kind of childcare system, the whole community actually benefits. It's been proven time and time again that high quality childcare strengthens the economy, and that happens primarily through supporting women's participation in the workforce. And this is an especially critical time for this support as we work toward economic recovery. We also know that high quality childcare improves children's outcomes and long-term outcomes in areas such as high school graduation rates and reduced criminal activity rates. There are transformative changes expected in the early years in childcare system over the next 5 years. And the most significant change is that the Canada-wide Early Learning and Childcare Plan is anticipated to reduce childcare fees to an average of $10 a day, and will also include funding to increase the number of licensed childcare spaces and to support the early years in childcare workforce. These are really exciting, frankly, once in a generation changes, but they do come with risks as well. Because without systemic changes that address our current barriers and the gaps in the system, there's a risk that Indigenous, Black, and racialized families and other families experiencing inequities may end up being further marginalized, and that is a significant concern for us. So for example, we know that the way that enrollment happens right now is problematic, and it unintentionally benefits families who are higher educated and English speaking who join waitlists for programs early. The demand, when the federal plan comes forward, the demand is expected to rise for childcare spaces because they'll be more affordable. But if we don't make changes to the enrollment practices, there is a risk that families who already have fewer choices will be pushed out of the childcare system altogether. The system plan includes 7 strategies and 29 actions, and they've been developed to address some of the critical gaps in the system, like the ones we heard from the families and the programs that I quoted at the beginning of the presentation. I'm not going to go through all the strategies, but I will share a few highlights. You may notice that some of the actions are familiar to you from previous presentations and reports to council and to committee of the whole. This is because some of the actions were made possible through funding, both from the reinvestment of the funding that supported the region of Waterloo's directly operated children's centers, and also from funding through council's strategic equity investment. For example, the system plan includes actions related to quality measurement approaches for all licensed childcare programs that is supported by our new quality improvement grants and supports such as training. These actions are supported by reinvested funding. A few other highlights from the system plan strategies and actions include creating and implementing our new workforce recruitment and retention strategy to address some of the critical challenges and ensure staff are compensated fairly. Improving the processes to register for childcare so they're more transparent and equitable. Supporting childcare sustainability as programs emerge from their current state of crisis through new funding and policies. increasing access to childcare fee subsidy for Indigenous, Black, and racialized families through new supports and funding, and creating a childcare growth strategy to support strategic growth of licensed childcare to address inequities in access to childcare. So we are really excited about the work ahead in the next 5 years. And many of the actions that you'll find in the plan are already underway. While we move forward with many of the actions, we're also developing implementation plans for each of the strategic priority areas and performance measurement frameworks that include targets wherever they are applicable. And this will help to guide our work and help us to measure our progress over the next 5 years. Ongoing engagement is a cornerstone plan with a wide range of families and stakeholders. We know this is critical to the success of the system plan, and we're committed to that ongoing engagement with our partners, particularly with families and organizations who may not have been well represented in our previous efforts, including Indigenous, Black, and racialized families. We will be looking to engage throughout the implementation of this plan to ensure the actions are responsive and are having the intended impacts. As this system plan is implemented, we want to change the system so significantly that the stories that I shared earlier are no longer relevant in 2026. That families have access to spaces when they need them, that childcare programs are affordable for everyone, that programs are truly inclusive and respond to the unique needs of families, and that all families experience a high quality program regardless of where they are enrolled. But to accomplish this, we need a strong workforce that is compensated fairly. The next 5 years have potential to bring about transformational change in our system. To be successful, though, this system is going to require a lot of advocacy, difficult conversations, hard work, and dedicated collaboration. I do know our local community is prepared for this challenge, and I look forward to working together to create our own very own made in Waterloo, equitable, high quality, affordable, and responsive system.
Okay, Barb, that's it. Okay, thank you very much. We have a bit of a lineup of questions here, and the first is Councillor Clark. Questions or comments?
Oops. Thanks, Chair Galloway, and thanks, Barb, for a great presentation. I have a lot of questions, but there's also a lot of people, so I'm going to keep it to two quick ones, I hope. One of the things in the report was the recognition that our centers are not equitably distributed geographically.
Yes.
And as you know, for at least a number of years now, new centers have almost exclusively been located in schools, in new schools, and any capital support for the building of new centers is tied to the building of new schools. Given that it costs a couple $1 million to build a licensed childcare center and meet all of the various licensing requirements, how will we encourage geographic distribution if schools aren't being built in downtown areas? For instance, how do you see that happening?
So often, thank you for that question, and it's a good one. Often the capital funding, it can also be related to when renovations are happening in existing schools. And from time to time, there has also been opportunities through the provincial capital funding program that centers could be built without there being a renovation, but that hasn't happened for several years. So those two kinds of capital funding have allowed us to build in already developed areas, but it certainly is a challenge. And whenever we process those capital requests with our school boards, we identify those areas and they have it on their radar that those are the locations where we are needing to be able to build childcare. There currently isn't any other capital solution to the issue, but I would say that is one area that we advocate with the province to find opportunities for capital funding that that can't be in schools because they're just not available.
It limits us a lot, and it pushes care out into the suburbs, and it's a systemic thing. Very quickly, my second question. Ontario is the only province and territory not to have signed on to the federal plan. That's been the case for several months now. My kids who live in Alberta have this coming, and before we do, imagine that. Your report seems to be more hopeful than I'm hearing a lot of childcare advocates be. Do you have some insights on that?
No, I don't have any special insights on that. We are urging the province and on the region's behalf, I know that council urged the signing of the agreement back in the fall after a report went forward. But no, I don't have any specific insights. I want to be clear, though, this service plan is not dependent on that deal being signed. The activities that we are partaking in the service plan are all within our current budget.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Okay, thanks, Councillor Clark. Councillor Strickland.
Thanks, Mr. Chair. Through you to Barb, very good report, and it's an exciting time for chair. I would suggest, I don't have any complete knowledge, but I would suggest there's a strong likelihood that Ontario will sign a deal with the federal government on $10 a day childcare before the next provincial election. So hopefully that happens, and then that will positively impact your report even more. My question is around inequities. I understand the cultural challenges that you've identified in the report, but also I'm hearing from community members about accessibility for shift workers, construction workers, gig economy workers. Like typically our childcare services are geared for an office worker, 9 to 5, 8 to 4. There's not a lot of flexibility to accommodate people who work 7 to 7 or, start early in the morning and end up late in the day. So just wondering if you can comment on that.
Yes.
Barb.
Yeah, it's certainly an issue. One place that we are fortunate in Waterloo region is we have a very robust licensed home child care system, and with many home child care operators who have their businesses in Waterloo region. There's about 350 homes at this time. That is the one place where people who are working hours outside of the regular business workday, whatever that is now, but that families can access care outside of those traditional hours, including overnight care. That said, for families who would like to have their child in a child care center, the option of being in a center is not available to them if they work shift work. It is expensive to operate that, and it will require increased investments to be able to do that. The only reason they don't exist, frankly, at this time would be because operators have not been able to find a way to do that and remain within their budgets and not be, for that to become a viability risk for them. So it is something we continue to look. I don't think, the solutions are perfect, but there is the licensed home child care option that absolutely is there and available for them.
Well, for that, and I do appreciate that. That is obviously not the perfect solution. Yeah. And, many working people feel that they aren't provided the same level of service as others who work in white collar professions, are typically 9 to 5.
Yeah.
And I hope, and I would hope that your report maybe could be adjusted to reflect that consideration. I didn't see anything in there. Maybe it could be flushed out a little bit more under accessibility, because when these new resources come, this $10 a day childcare, that's paid by all taxpayers. And I know we're doing our best to work with private and non-profit providers and really provide the best service we can. but we need to at least be very conscientious and purposeful, I would say, in providing those kinds of childcare services, whatever way we can, for people who go to work every day. Because right now, they're forced to find other options, mostly outside of a regulated childcare system. So I will leave it at that, Barb. I know you understand the issue. I'm really hopeful when it comes back to council that we have some options to consider and how we can adjust our childcare system to reflect that.
Thank you so much for that, Councillor Strickland. I am quite sure it is embedded within the plan, but we will take note of that and make sure that that is considered and considered and strategized. Thank you for drawing attention to that.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Strickland. Councillor Shantz.
Thank you. Thanks for the report. A whole lot of work has gone into this, and I think we're heading in a good direction, and there's still more consultation and engagement that needs to happen. My questions were sort of along the same line as Councillor Strickland, so I'll just I'll ask it this way, I guess. As a service provider, one of the things we can offer is training. That's a fairly easy one. We have sort of control over that. We're not operating spaces anymore. We need increased spaces. What strategies do we have to encourage providers to create those spaces?
Well, that's a really good question. Right now, it's a question of adequate funding. In order to expand into creating more spaces, there would be additional funding required to be able to grow. We have maxed out what is available and what we know is coming through the schools capitals programs, but there is no additional operating funding available. And so we are ongoingly advocating to the province and the federal government for the need to be able for funding that would allow us to expand. And so that's where the signing of the federal agreement would definitely help to ease the pressure there so that we can expand. I do want to say that, and I did say this in the presentation, but I feel the need to repeat that we have to be careful that we do not expand without considering the stability of the current system. Looking at our, there is a workforce labor shortage right now. Early childhood educators are underpaid. One of the key indicators of quality is a workforce that is well paid, well compensated, and well trained. And so we must be careful that we not expand at the expense of and without addressing those other issues, along with the importance of addressing the equity issue as well.
Okay, thank you.
So a complex solution to
it is.
It seems simple, right?
I know it. Yeah. Oh, good. $10 a day. Yeah, it's not that simple. Yeah.
Okay, thanks, Councillor Shantz. Councillor Clark.
I've already spoken, so perhaps Councillor Erb can go first.
Yes, Councillor Erb.
Thank you. Thanks, Barb, for the report, and it's good to hear the enthusiasm in your voice and of your colleagues that wanting to implement this. My one question was related to the availability of workers, and you addressed that partially. I'm just wondering, since the region made the decision to be providing spaces, has there been a shift? How has the landscape changed in the general field in providing childcare in the region? You see any kind of a shift?
It's hard. It is a difficult question because this is also we've also been in the middle of a pandemic, and so what makes this really unusual right now is that, frankly, early childhood educators are burnt out to do with the pressures in their job, but layering on all the things that come with the pandemic. fewer families are registered right now in the system as well because of the pandemic, and families are opting for other options for care. And then there is significant cost pressures on childcare operators because operating in a pandemic is more expensive as well. So I'm afraid I don't know that I can comment on the impact yet of the closure of the 5 children's centers. At this time, there are still enough spaces in some areas. There's still wait lists in other areas, which is consistent. The one thing that we have seen shift is the labor shortage has become worse. That would not have to do with our operated centers, but rather the pandemic and frankly, an pre-existing issue in the workforce that's being felt across the province. So how was that for a non-answer?
That was helpful. You know, I think COVID has just changed so many things.
It has.
So that's understandable. Thank you.
Okay, Councillor Clark, and you're going to move it as well, Councillor Clark?
Yes, I'll do that. Thanks. Yeah, just a couple of comments, really more from my colleagues. As Barb has said, this issue, this workforce issue, is a province-wide crisis. There have been emergency meetings called with deputy ministers and people to try to sort through it. So it's certainly not just something that we're experiencing here, but everywhere. And just one point about expanding. It's and people may already be aware of this, so bear with me. It's not simply a matter of saying to childcare center A, add 10 spaces. A center is entirely limited in the number of spaces it can have by its square footage. Licensing requires are very, very specific. So in order to expand, we need to build more centers or build more classrooms. So any expansion requires capital investments. And I think that's really where the big hang up is. I think there's lots of centers that would happily take on a couple more kids, but they simply can't because they don't they're not approved by the Ministry of Education for that many spaces.
Okay, so I just wanted to comment too that I was really pleased with the report, really quite excited about the plan. And I see the childcare plan, childcare generally is really a very integral part of the whole upstream agenda that we're on, both in terms of the benefits for the children that are cared through the system, but also for the parents and the guardians of the children that can get proper childcare, and allows the parents to have jobs or engage in all those other activities that they need to do that. So I'm really encouraged by the plan, and Councillor Clark is going to move it, and if someone would second it, Councillor Shantz. And you can vote then with your voting buttons. And that is carried. Okay, I'm going to call a 15-minute break. We'll be back here at 12:30. Okay, I'll see you then. live again. Okay, we're good to go again. I just wanted to mention that there's 3 of us up here in the upper horseshoe here in the chamber, and we're all left-handed. So we've decided that for the municipal election in the fall, in addition to being 18 and a Canadian citizen, you're going to have to be left-handed. Because we all know left-handed people make better decisions.
No argument.
Okay, all right.
In your dreams.
We don't want to be left out.
Very good, Les. All right, so the next item on the agenda is, and we have no more staff presentations, so we'll be doing questions and answers only. And the next item is the Duke Street Cycling Improvement Plan, a notice of public engagement. No decision being made, just notification of the public engagement process. So any questions on that particular matter? Okay, seeing none, but I do have some. Mr. Vandekeur or Mr. Spencer, I've had a few people contact me, and of course it's still subject to the public engagement process. It'll be coming back to council. But how will the intersections between Frederick Street, on Duke that is, between Frederick and College actually be constructed or signed to prevent people from turning, or to force people, rather, to turn off the street as opposed to being going straight through? It has to be open for buses. Is it going to be strictly on the honor system with signage? Or will there be some actual physical indication that you can't go forward? You have to turn off the street in what's called the neighborhood street.
Sure, I can take that question, Chair. Yeah, the specifics around the detailed design haven't been ironed out yet. At this stage, we're kind of looking at a conceptual level, but most likely it would involve signage and some sort of signal design to prohibit motorists from moving through the intersection. The reason we couldn't really use physical barriers is that there would be exceptions to the through movements, particularly transit vehicles, emergency services, and the like. So it would be likely through signage and traffic signal design.
And do we have any other, whether it's the region or a city road somewhere that uses this concept?
I'm not aware of it in the city. We have seen the concept in other jurisdictions in Ontario successfully implemented. So, yeah, but I'm not aware of any in the region at this point.
Mm-hmm. Okay. And the reason that we can't do it in that particular section, we can do the bi-directional lanes elsewhere, but is because there's just not enough right-of-way to...
Yeah, that's correct. There's just not enough physical space with the existence of the LRT, some established buildings within close proximity to the right-of-way. We just don't have the space to put in something exclusive for bicycles in that section.
And if we were to use the sidewalk and reconstruct the cross-section to some extent, would we be able to put a bidirectional MUT in where the sidewalk and the boulevards currently exist?
Yeah, so again, there are physical constraints in the tightest locations. The best we could do with multi-use trails would be substandard in terms of width. But more so, given the proximity to the significant transit lines, we felt it was important to provide a dedicated space for cyclists and pedestrians separate from each other. So MUTs are a little bit challenging because, yeah, it obviously doesn't provide that separation. And then its worst location would be, you know, well below 3 meters, our standard width.
Right. Okay. Okay. Thank you, Daryl. No other questions, and that's just a notification that is going out for public engagement. The next item is the proposed changes to the Housing Services Act relative to end of mortgage. Are there any questions in regards to that particular matter? There is a recommendation to endorse the communication with the feedback to those proposed changes. Councillor Erb and Chair Redmond, if you would vote then with your voting buttons. And that's carried. Thank you. The next item is a number of project team memberships that are available and are going to be competed for by members of council. We do have some volunteers who have already indicated the City of Waterloo members of council are very organized and have already done a little divvying up on some Waterloo items. Councillor Harris has also indicated a preference on one particular item or two particular items. I have to check here. But anyways, there is a list of 10 projects that are available, and I understand Councillor Strickland will take the Herb Street Menno to Westmount Road. Councillor Erb is taking the separated cycling facility study, Herb Street, Bridgeport Road. Unless there's people who want to compete with them for those items. And I have an email from Councillor Harris from earlier today that is, he would like to be on the Schneider Creek multi-use path item and the waste management working group, which I also have Councillor Erb for. But we'll certainly also allow other people to vie for these if there's competition. That's not usually the case, however. Councillor Schatz.
Thanks. I would take the Airport Regional Road Network one. And I see you want someone from the township for the waste management. I could defer to one of my other colleagues on that one, but if nobody wants it, I would do that one too.
Okay, Councillor Clark.
I'm interested in the waste management working group, but I don't want to displace someone else who might be more appropriate.
Okay, Councillor Brbanovic.
Thanks, Chair Galloway. I mean, at this point, I just have one question. It has to do with the snow facility. Where is that? And I guess I'm just sort of wondering about it because, I mean, it's the lower tiers that I think have the snow dump, like, you know, I don't want to call them snow dumps, but I guess that's what it is.
Yeah, good question. It's a site selection process. Can Mr. Schmidt, is he on? Yes, he is.
Through you, Mr. Chair, and Steve Vandekar is on as well. But we also have snow. Yes, the cities do much of the snow lifting for us in the urban areas, but we also have significant snow lifting that's done in the rural areas, for which we also need to find a location to store it. So it is a location study. I'm not sure if we have any particular sites in mind right now, but that is the purpose of that study, is to look at different locations that would best meet the regions.
But it's like,
Okay.
Vanicare, if you have anything to add.
Sorry, it's likely to be a township location though, is that right?
Yes, likely to be.
Okay, gotcha. Thank you for that.
Okay, Councillor Kiefer?
Yeah, thanks, Chair Galloway. I'll volunteer if nobody else wants to. I think there's 2 spots on the Regional Transportation Committee.
Mm-hmm. Okay, Councillor McGarry?
Well, this is timely. That's the committee I'd like to sit on as well. The Regional Transportation Master Plan.
Okay. All right, Councillor Jowett?
I'll go on that wastewater since you need someone from Cambridge there.
Waste management?
Yep. Sorry, waste management. Yep. Yeah. Sorry.
And Councillor Foxton?
I can do the snow storage.
Snow storage?
Yeah.
Okay. And Councillor Nowak?
Yeah, Wellesley Water and Wastewater Master Plan.
There you go.
Be obvious. Do you have someone, I'm sorry, for the Waste Management Working Group? Do you have a rural area? I missed that.
Councillor Shantz was, but she is willing to stand aside if somebody else from the township wanted on that one, I think.
I wouldn't mind, but I don't want to get into fisticuffs with her.
Ooh.
We'll arm wrestle later. It's okay. You can have it.
Okay.
Okay. And okay, so we appear to be okay on all of them. Or the first one that we do not have is the Maryhill Road, Notre Dame to Charles Street. That's in Woolwich.
That's just a local councillor, so
Oh, that's just a local councillor. Sorry, yeah, that's right. Okay, then.
Councillor Galloway?
Yes.
I have my hand up. Sorry.
Yeah.
Just the RTNP one. I know it only had 2 spots, and Councillors McGarry and Kiefer have expressed interest. If there's an opportunity for another one, just to bring another spot, another area of the region into it, I would certainly be interested in that one. But if there's only 2, I'll leave it with the 2 of them.
I was going to take that one.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's fine. I didn't see your name there.
Not yet, no, because I hadn't come forward yet. But there was that one. I would have gone on the other, or the one that Councillor Harris is on, but he can do that. And so we have the snow storage is done, the airport. I'll go on the water supply master plan. We're looking for one more on that.
If it's okay to be from Kitchener, I can do that one instead of the waste management. I don't have it up in front of me, sorry. If Councillor Harris wants that one. I wasn't sure whether he was just volunteering to be a good person or whether he was passionate about it.
Was that the second one he offered for? No, he was waste management, yeah. Yeah, we can use the second person on the water supply.
Okay, put me on that one and take me off the waste management.
Okay. Mr. Schmidt?
Through you, Mr. Chair, I was just going to note that the numbers we have are staff's estimate of what we need.
Yeah.
If someone wants to have 2 people or 3 people or more, that's perfectly acceptable on any of these. We don't want to overload council by selecting more than are necessary, but if instead of 1 there's 2, that's not a problem at all.
Yeah. Okay, so Councillor Shantz, are you up next? Or is that an old hand?
No, I have another question. I thought at one point when I was reading these that there was like an integrated transportation committee of some kind. Did I misread that? Was that one of my vivid dreams or?
No, that's already been constituted.
Okay. Okay. So it's not included in here. Okay. Thank you.
Yeah, that's already been constituted.
But I can't find it in the reports. Was it removed then because of that?
Just an email.
There was an email on it.
Oh, it was an email. Okay,
Yeah,
thank you.
There was an email on that one, yeah. It's not part of these approvals, so. Councillor McGarry.
Thanks, Chair. I just wondered if the water supply post was already filled. I missed seeing that when it was up.
No, we can put you there as well. As Mr. Schmidt indicated, these are kind of like the minimum numbers. We can certainly put more people on if there's more interest. And some of these
well, I'd be happy to. I'd happy to be on that as well.
Okay, good. And Councillor Foxton.
Just a comment, Chair, that I've never seen these snapped up so quickly, and I commend my colleagues.
Oh.
Okay, so we, and I'm going to go on the waste management as well. So I think we've got everything covered. Is everybody, or Councillor Rubanovic?
Yeah, just on the RTMP one, in light of Mr. Schmidt's comment, I'll add myself onto number 9. I don't see it on the list.
Yep, okay.
Thank you.
Okay, so Julie, do you think you have everything captured? Oh, no, that was a local councillor only. Yeah, we don't need, that'll go to Woolwich Council. Got one. Councillor Foxton, is that an old hand or a new hand?
I can't get to my hands, the screen's up. Can you take the screen down? Thank you. Sorry.
Oh, okay. That's what that was about. Okay. All right. So we have enough, correct? I think we're done already. Okay. The next item is okay, we need to pass a motion with those names, with all those names. Councillor Jaworski and Councillor McGarry, all in favor? Please use your voting machines.
All right, I think.
Just so you know, Councillor Rubanovic, when you turn your camera off, then if your hand's up to want to speak, you're not on this screen, you're on a different screen. So anyways, all right, so that is the last item for the agenda. We've done the Ministerial Zoning Orders matter. Is there any other business to bring to the meeting? Okay, there is none. The next meeting is March the 8th, and we'll have a motion to adjourn. Councillor Rubanovic and Councillor Jowett. Oh, I thought that chandelier was your hand, Helen, sorry. Okay, all in favor? And that's carried. Okay, thank you very much, everyone. Have a safe drive home.
Safe drive home, folks.
Yeah, well, I got that in before Les did, so.